Hello and welcome to Talking Books. I'm Jewel de Villiers. Today we're stepping off the beaten path to delve into matters spiritual and metaphysical. To do so, I'm joined by TLB Kurger, author of the book The Perennial Truth, Awakening of the Soul. My guest is a CA by profession and spent over 20 years in the corporate sector before investing in his own business. During this time, over the past 3 decades, he studied spiritual sciences. Welcome, Chart, and thanks for coming in to chat to us. Can we first look at your corporate career and what is it in the corporate world that inspired you to start exploring spiritual matters?
So I think the corporate world really offered an opportunity, a foundation to look for more in the world. I found that corporate success didn't necessarily give me the fulfillment that I needed in life, and that prompted my search for something more.
So how did you start this journey?
So I started the journey after a spiritual intervention, one could call it, in 1991 when I was preparing for a professional bodybuilding show. And in that moment I experienced what one could call the present moment and communion with my higher self. And this kick-started a journey of discovery, of self-discovery and search that led me across the world.
Now this present moment, I think most people would be aware of Eckhart Tolle. Is it the same sort of thing he's talking about here?
It's exactly the same kind of thing. I think there are many definitions of the present moment. The biggest challenge is to know how to enter it.
So, yeah, so how?
So how? In the book that I've just published, The Perennial Truth, we have a technique called the Mahakala. And the Mahakala technique describes the steps for one to, one could call, dissolve or merge with the present moment.
Now, I'd like to just go into, because you come from a very Afrikaans home and you grew up in a traditional Afrikaans religious background.
Yes.
How did you move from that into becoming interested in Eastern mysticism, and how do you bring this together?
So I think when I left school and went to university, I found myself drifting away from traditional religion. I couldn't reconcile my expanding experience of the world with the doctrine that I'd followed during my teenage years. So I think it first started with almost a detachment to the traditional Christian religion, and then later when the interest was stimulated again, I started searching for a solution without any barriers, without any limits to it.
So you the book is also a journey. There are 3 sections to the book.
Yes.
The first section is your journey, on your spiritual journey, which took you to India on several occasions. Yes. You met, for example, the gurus Sai Baba, Sri Sri Ravi Shankar, and the controversial Osho, or Sri Bhagwan Rajneesh.
Bhagwan Rajneesh,
yeah.
yes.
So tell me about that experience, please.
So I think I was blessed in the sense that every journey led to some form of revelation. Revelation about who I am, what life is. So I was very lucky in the sense that each trip was accompanied by what one would call a satori, a spiritual insight that gradually led me to writing what we now call the Perennial Truth.
So let's just break away from the spiritual side. I'd like to come back to it a little bit later, but let's look at the corporate world and what this philosophy can do to help things work out better. You mentioned a little bit earlier before we came in the soccer match that you were watching and how the players were not really working together.
Yes. So I think the basic fundamental attribute of consciousness is its ability to integrate everything as one. In other words, the principle of oneness. That you can connect to something larger than just you. You can connect to a team. You can connect to an organization, can be integrated to act as one. But in order to achieve this, one needs to learn the ability to step beyond the egotistical perspective of reality.
Yeah, so just describe the game that you were watching and how you could see that they were not connecting to each other, they were not being one, they were not playing as a team.
So I don't know if you want me to mention the game.
Yes, please mention the game.
Okay, so this was the game between England and Colombia. And what was apparent from both teams was that every time a complex move was undertaken, they weren't finding their players. The ball wasn't finding their players. So every time a move was put into motion, there wasn't an awareness between the players of the spatial presence of each person. Now, to acquire the awareness of the spatial presence of others, one needs to move beyond the egotistical perspective into a spatial awareness, which is the present moment.
Mm-hmm. So the same can then be brought into the corporate team. Do you offer courses to help corporates overcome this problem?
Yes, so I think the challenge for corporate organizations is to achieve oneness as an organization. How do I get my organization, my people in my organization, to strive towards the same goal? How can I get my organization to act as a team, like that team on the soccer field? When one has internal strife, when one has egos that are misaligned within an organization, that has a selfish objective, not necessarily the organization's perspective or objective, then one finds that the organization is not as successful as it could be. Mm-hmm. So we offer mindfulness in the workplace workshops with organizations where we teach the individuals and how to step beyond the ego's perspective of life into a larger context, the context of the present moment, the context of team, so that the team can win rather than winning at the cost of others.
Oh. And that's only to the benefit of the company, but
yes.
not always easily achieved.
Yes.
So if we come back to the book, we've now looked at the first part of the book, which is like the journey that you're taking. Second part is theory.
Yes.
It's quite a lot of theory to go through. And then the third part is practical application.
Yes.
Of the theory. Would you like to mention one or two of the theoretical aspects that you think might be interesting to our viewers at this point?
Yes. I think significant for us to recognize is that when we experience life, it is from more than one perspective. There's a physical perspective, the body and the management of the body. There's the mental aspect of thoughts and knowledge and awareness, and then there's the emotional aspect of how I feel about what's happening in life. And it's very important to realize that these three, we could call it beings within us, are not necessarily aligned. If I'm in the workplace but my heart is not in it, I will keep watching the clock. So part of the journey of learning how to be in the present moment is learning how to bring all three parts of you, the physical, the mental, and the emotional, to the task at hand. So I think very relevant for us is recognizing that there is more than one part to us. Also very significant to realize is that the ego, the personality that we have, consists of more than one persona. So personality is not just a singular thing. It has 12 limbs that allow us to interface and interact with life. And familiarity with these parts of these personas, which is part of our personality, allows us to understand ourselves, to understand what the habits are that we've acquired in life, and how to surpass these habits and move towards a singular goal for my entire personality.
But most people have, at a certain point in their lives, or maybe even through their whole lives, a certain dominant persona or certain dominant personas which influence their life and could maybe sometimes even be to the detriment of how their life unfolds.
Yes.
So you may have the warrior overtaking, the warrior persona overtaking, or being too weak, not fighting back, not
Yes.
standing up against the bullies, but standing back. That is then the recessionary
The martyr.
side,
Yes.
Of that coming in. How do you then try to balance these? Do you need to become aware of all of these personas in you?
Yes. Jill, I think that is the key point. I think what Perennial Truth gives us is an awareness and an ability to be aware of what aspect of our persona we are in at any given moment in time, and how some sometimes perform the roles of others. So, in other words, when you're dealing with your children, you really want to explore the caregiving aspect of your personality, rather than the planning aspect of your personality, which you would use more at work and more in planned activities. So understanding how these personas within us come and go, how they're evoked by the external environment, and where it is perhaps that we've not been using the correct persona, where another one's been dominant, helps us to become more natural in life. So if you go to the office party and you're meant to have fun, that your jester persona participates in this activity, rather than your warrior who would confront others, or rather than your judge that would stand by the sideline and judge everyone else. So in this manner, with this initial awareness, one develops an awareness of what it means to be natural and to engage naturally with life.
Chart, this is an absolutely fascinating book, and I think a lot of our readers viewers may be interested in reading the book. You are offering 5 copies
Yes.
to interested viewers. What must they do to qualify to receive a copy from you?
Okay, so we have a Facebook page under the name The Perennial Truth. So the first 5 viewers that come online and indicate that they would like a copy of the book and the journal will qualify for a free copy.
Oh, that's fantastic. Thank you, Chart, for coming in and talking to us.
Thank you, Jill, and thank you very much for the opportunity. I really appreciate it.
Thank you. And if you're a spiritual seeker, this book is for you. The book is The Perennial Truth, Awakening of the Soul, and the author is TLB Kurger. And that was it for this edition of Talking Books. Thanks for watching.